Hey guys, it's Gazi here. Welcome back to another video with a new patch finally out. We got some really nice buffs and I'm really excited for them. I'm going to talk about my interface settings a little bit and I'm going to show you guys an updated rotation guide and about some stats and gearing going forward. So without further ado, let's get the video started. Your default interface is going to look something like this. I have had a lot of questions and comments asking me how I set up my interface. So I'm going to show you guys real quick. If you guys are not interested in this, feel free to just skip this part. There will be timestamps in the video to quickly go through the desired content. Now, if you go into interface settings, the first thing I do is I like to check out my quick 3 bar and quick bar 3 and quick bar 4. What I do is I make them a little bit longer because there are a lot of toys that I use, and for example, Western Soap is one of my favorite, and I just like to have them at handy whenever I want them. The second thing that I do, let me just drag this out of the way. Second thing I do is I drag the PvP crowd control bar like right in the center, along with the PvE CC icon in the middle. So what this does is whenever you're CC'd, it actually covers your entire character and it's really easy to distinguish. We won't be getting new skills anytime soon, so let me just get this out of the way. And then from this point on, what I like to do is I set the special combat tips along with the boss event tip just below my character. So the main idea of my interface is that since my eyes are actually focused on the center of the monitor, so like if you watch where my mouse is, usually in the fights, my eyes are just kind of like in the middle of the monitor, so I want to get as much information in the center of the monitor as possible. So I'm gonna drag the mastery source just right below the boss event tips. Okay. I usually like to make it a little bit larger because this is something that I'm gonna look at for the majority of the time as a CDS player. And here comes the important part that most people ask for. So how do I make the icons really large and make them really easy to distinguish? With the new rotation out that you guys are gonna see right after I adjust my quick bar, is you're going to want to monitor at least your Shadows for Focus cooldown, um, because you want to cast it as much as possible. So I'm getting a little bit off topic, so I'm just going to show you guys how I set this up real quick. You can right click on the quick bars and make it a little bit bigger to the um, desire how big it is. I believe I was using 150. I'm actually not sure how to check right after this. And then kind of just like put them on the side over here. Okay, let me just check real quick how big they actually are. Let me just drag this. Oh, whoops. Quick bar 5 to activate them. Quick bar 7, I also need to activate it. See, that is actually smaller than I usually use them. So actually, they need to be in one row. You don't really have to do this. You can put them on one side. I just like it on both sides. Make it 2 on each side. The other one is 7. Okay, and I'm gonna make them a little bit bigger. And voila, there we go. So I just kind of like pop in and out of the menu to get everything perfect. And there you go. Um, Another thing that's really important is I like to put the target casting bar right in the center of the monitor. So whenever the boss casts a spell, it's really easy to distinguish because it's gonna be so big on top of your head, and it's really easy to interrupt. Um, and lastly, I like to monitor my own effects. So you can go into your additional effect bar. I like to use the second one, but you can drag these around to wherever you want them. I set them to be 150% because I think that's the best icon size. And you're gonna go into whichever bar that you want. You're gonna click Activate Effect Bar and click Show Own Effects. And in the effect list, you're gonna type out exactly what I have here if you wanna copy what I do. So the first two things are Unstoppable and your free CC. So it tells you. Oh, sorry, this shouldn't be in here. The first two things tells you how long your free CC gonna be, and then the following are your class monitors. So your burst, which is your purity, and then your two glyphs, and the new focusing sword and 10 is also in here, but just down below, and also your mystery state and tells you how long your DR will last. The Chinese characters behind the straight line is the name that you can give. So what you can do, so is if you do something like this, right? So for example, purity, and you can give it a name, and then for example, burst. But I don't recommend using like so many characters because like the way this game is set up, if you're using like I think more than 4 characters or more than 3 characters, it actually splits the text into 2 lines and makes it really awkward. Um, so maybe just use like a 3 letter, maybe like a burr or like a B for burst or something like that, and just give it a name. But you don't even have to give it a name if you don't want to. I want to leave this in the description box so you guys can copy and paste. Wolf's Wisdom, Days End, and Dream Devourer are damaging buffs that you get from other classes. This benefits more for SSF users because you can actually choose when you want to use your Shadow Sword focus compared to CDS. It's more like a you're doing like a wave-ish kind of rotation where you don't really have the ability to choose when you use your burst, right? You kind of just like using as much CDS as you can. But for SSF users, what you can do is you're looking at, okay, I have about say 7 seconds left on my Wolf's Wisdom, which is the Call of the Wolf from Berserkers. I'm going to use Shadow Sword Focus at the end of it when it has 1 second left to get the maximum amount of DPS. And off camera, I've also dragged around some combat buffs and debuff, also HP class resources a little bit. So if you guys want to screenshot this real quick, I'm going to leave this here. I also set the class resource to be 110%, so slightly bigger than my HP bar. It's just easier for me to tell. And without further ado, I'm going to go into the rotation. Now let's talk about rotation. The entire idea of playing CDS is to throw out as much CDS as you can. So let's think about how we can recover Sword Intents, right? You can get 1 Sword Intent from using Crane Talents. You get one Sword Intent on the third cast of your Concussion Sword. You get 2 on your Glyph, and you get 8 from your Shadow Sword Focus. Um, so the main priority of CDS is to cast SSF as much as you can. I know it's a little bit ironic. So the entire idea of your rotation is to try to start casting your CDS starting from 5 at around 2 seconds left on your Shadow Sword Focus. That is for your normal rotation. Just think about that. I want you guys to forget about using this after this or using this after that. And just think about how do I maximize my Shadows for focus usage as much as I can. So if you are casting your CDS and for example you're at about 3 sword intents and it's off cooldown already, and then you're charging it back to 5, and then you're casting it, that means you are letting this on cooldown for about 4 seconds, and that is a big no-no. So starting from the burst, we're gonna do something a little different. At the burst, we're gonna start charging your CDS right away at about 10 seconds before the fight at the countdown. The entire idea is to get your glyph to at about 20-second cooldown. So there are a couple ways you could do this. You could get the guild leader yourself. You can get the party leader yourself and start the countdown as you charge, or you can just kind of like go at around -1 second into the fight. You'll see why in a second. Whichever way you do is fine. Like starting a fight 1 second late is actually really worth it because you got one extra 5-star CDS at the end of your burst. So you're gonna charge your glyph at about 20 seconds. You're gonna start, and then the standard opener with 3 crings. Use your burst, shadows for focus. This concussion buff is really nice. It lasts for like 8 seconds. You can do like whatever. You're gonna charge it Back into 5 again. Now, the reason why we let our glyph go down to 20 seconds is because of this. At the end of your burst, with your second glyph proccing, you can actually cast two 5-star CDS in a row. One, and your glyph pops, and then right at the end of the burst, you have another 5-star CDS. And then you still have 1 second left on your burst, and you can use another Crane Talons. And then you're charging it back to 5 again. Into a 4. One little trick that I do is whenever I'm casting my CDS, there's because it takes about 2 seconds to cast a 5-star CDS, so you have about 2 seconds to monitor everything that you have. So a few things that I like to look at is number one, how long is left on my sword? What is the cooldown left on my Shadow Sword Focus? That is the most important thing. If I have about 2 to 3 seconds left, that means I can squeeze in a concussion sword right before, and then I could keep this concussion sword buff for the next rotation. And number two is I look at how long is left on my glyph and then adjust my rotation accordingly. And lastly, probably not the most important thing is your chi. Um, it's really happens when you run out of chi. When you run out of chi, that means you have done something wrong in your rotation. And of course, you don't want your talent stacks to be over 4 stacks as well. So I'm looking at my glyph. My glyph is at about 4 seconds left, so that's why I'm going to do a 5 instead of a 4 over here. And I'm actually going to... Well, my cat just jumped on my table. Sorry guys, give me a second. Let me go back real quick. Let me go back just a little bit. So with this glyph proccing, um, in order to proc this glyph, you have to have less than one sword intent. So what you do is instead of like casting Crane Talents into like a bunch of concussion swords right away, you actually want to cast a series of concussion swords to make sure that you don't want to proc your you don't want this glyph to like not meet the requirements to proc. Because like if you do, for example, concussion like for example crane, you have two sword intents, and that will not proc the glyph. If that makes sense. So let me just go back a little bit again, a little bit more. So after that 5-star CDS, I'm pumping 3 concussion swords in a row. I'm proccing the glyph along the way. Then I'm gonna start dumping my Crane Talons. Okay, at this point, I know my sword intent. My sword intent is full. I'm gonna charge a 5-star CDS, and this is the perfect timing because my Shadow Sword Focus is at about 2-second cooldown. Pop it into another 5, into a 4, like always. At this point, I know my Crane Talons have overflown. That's why I'm gonna prioritize using Crane Talons for the next set of the rotations. Crane, concussion, crane, concussion, crane, concussion. And it's about 2 seconds left on my Shadows for Focus again, which is perfect. That's the entire idea of the rotation. Now, when I'm charging this CDS, I know that my Shadows for Focus is barely ahead of my glyph. So in order to proc this glyph, I need to cast this my Shadows for Focus as soon as it's off cooldown. So I'm actually just like spamming it just like that, which gives me another Cloudbreak wave, which gives me another 5-star CDS. We're holding the burst for about 5 to 6 seconds because we want to have Shadow Sword Focus ready in our burst to throw out as much CDS within the burst as possible. Now back into a 4. Now here's is the catch over here, you guys. Now because Purity gives us a 30% magic attack burst, that means we want to cast as much CDS within the burst as possible. So what I do here is at the end of my burst, instead of doing a normal rotation, like using normally I would probably just do a 5-star CDS and charge it back to full and then do a 4. So what I do is I only charge a 3-stack. Now because we have the Serenity Glyph, um, as soon as we let go of the 3-star CDS, it's going to pump us back into 5, and I'm going to do another 5-star CDS at the end. pumping a Crane Talons at the end. Now, because the Glyph is off cooldown, and I want to proc it, so this is what I do, right? So, sorry. Let me go back a little bit more. So right now my glyph is at about 3 seconds, and I really want to proc it because I don't want to. I want to keep this cooldown running at all times. So what I do is I actually make myself go down to one sword intense, charging from 3 stacks. I do a little 2 over here, and it's gonna proc the glyph, and then I'm gonna resume my rotation, and then like with doing everything, my Shadow Sword focus is still at about 2 seconds cooldown. I don't know how much that makes sense to you guys, but it makes sense to me. We're back into our normal rotation again. The entire idea is to cast this as soon as it's off cooldown. Now at this time, I know my Shadow Sword focus is barely ahead of my Glyph. I'm gonna spam it right away, which gives me another 5, which is perfect. Oh, here is something really cool I want to show you guys too. So when I'm charging the CDS, right? So right now my sword intense is at 5. And when I'm charging, I notice that my Shadow Sword focus is at about 3 seconds cooldown. And we know it only takes about 2 seconds to charge a 5-star CDS. So what I do is at the end of my charge, I'm going to squeeze in a Concussion Sword to prep for the next rotation. So basically my Concussion Sword and my Shadow Sword focus goes out right after another. And it sets my Concussion Sword into stage 2. And we're just gonna resume our rotation like that. Once again, I know my when I'm at 5 sword intense, I'm at about 3 seconds, so I'm a little bit faster than my usual pace. So I'm gonna squeeze in another concussion sword and resume my rotation. And when I'm charging this, I notice my glyph is coming off cooldown. So instead of doing a 4, I'm going to go all the way to do a full charge. Okay, and then my burst is ready again. So because we don't have to worry about animation cancel anymore, so basically every single time I just use 1000 swords right after my burst. And then sort of Shadow Sword focus. I'm noticing my cranes are overflowing, so I'm going to prioritize using cranes. But I never cast like 2 cranes right after the other. Like I always mix in a concussion sword. Like this is like in this method, instead of using 3 concussion swords or like 2 crane talons right after the other, I do like crane concussion or like concussion crane. So like a mixture of these to get the flow going. Especially this is a really important thing to do, especially to manage your chi. Even though as CDS users, our chi is really not that important compared to Shadow Sword focus users because we're using CDS so much and it regains chi for us. But once you run out of chi and you run out of Crane Talon stacks, like you just AFK there for like 3 seconds, like it is really 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 bad. Okay, Shadow Sword focus. So remember what I did. I do 1,000 swords. I do a 3, and then I let go, and then go back into a 5. I believe this is when I made a mistake. So once again, I squeezed another concussion sword because I had 1 second free cast before my Shadow Sword focus. I resume my rotation from there. 3 seconds. Squeeze in. Shadow Sword focus. So this is when I made a mistake, right? If we go back a little bit, I'm gonna look at the mistake that I did. So what I did was I started charging a what's it called, a CDS starting from 4, and then like it completely messed me up. So like I'm desperately trying to adjust my rotation to fit my Shadows for Focus because like mistakes do happen. Like it's really like, almost impossible to have a perfect rotation, especially within a boss fight. Um, it is really unfortunate that I got it like in a parse demonstration video, but I decided to show this clip anyway because I want to tell you guys like the entire idea is to adjust your rotation according to the cooldown left on your Shadows for Focus. So let's see what I do over here. So like I'm charging it back to full, but like even with the bad rotation, I'm still charging my 5-star CDS starting from 5 at about 2 seconds left on my Shadows for Focus. Glyph pops. I'm gonna go all the way down to 0. Proc the Glyph. Squeezing another one. Concussion Sword because I had a 1 second free cast. Go to a 4. Now, during this rotation, I'm noticing that my Glyph is actually just slightly ahead of my Shadows for Focus. That's why I'm just gonna ignore the Glyph. There's nothing that you can do. Like if they both come off the cooldown at the same time, there's nothing you can do. If the Glyph procs slightly faster, there's nothing you can do. But like if it's slightly behind your Shadows for Focus, if you spam Shadows for Focus, you can still manage to use the Glyph. Everything else is remains to be the same. Shadows for Focus, 3, cancel, go to a 5. Only do that in a burst. And do another squeeze over here. My Crane Talents are overflowing, so I'm going to prioritize using Crane Talents starting from now. Goes at 3, so I'm going to squeeze in another one. And oh, that's the end of the parse. Sorry. I actually did have another 5 Sword Intense at the end of the parse, so if I decided to use that, that was gonna be 358 swords. Usually when I parse, I get about 352 swords. 352 to about 358. If I end on 501, usually I get 358. If I end on 5 minutes exactly, I usually get about 352 or 353. Um, when you guys are just starting out, aim for like 346. I think it's a really good number to as a small goal, and then like you work your way up from there. Now let's talk about gearing and stats along with Astrals going forward. It's a little bit wonky right now because in the combination tool you can still only use level 2 talismans for the gear, but stat priority wise is almost exactly the same as last patch. You're still going to go for as much mastery as you can. I'm still using the perception hat. I'm also probably going to be going for about 10 to 11% haste, depending on how many astrals I have. So this is the set I'm using. Mastery crit hat, same thing as last patch. Mastery top, mastery haste bracers, belt is mastery haste, pants is mastery perception, and the shoes are power perception, mastery rings, mastery accessories, and the only difference here is instead of using a red gem like I did last patch, I decided to use a blue gem for this patch. It's because with the scaling and the buffs to mastery, since the skill change, I do believe mastery outscales magic power just a little bit more than last patch. So instead of a red gem here, I've decided to use a mastery gem, and everything else is exactly the same. You're not going to take any haste on your what do you call these relics, and then your weapon is still going to be the mastery perception. Now I know the stat looks like a little bit wonky right now because it says 10.94 haste, which means we are losing about 0.94% haste, but keep in mind, once we are able to use the level 3 talismans, this part over here, instead of 52 haste, is going to be I think 66 haste, which is going to push us just over 11%, maybe close to 12%. Once again, because I don't know how many astrals we're going to have when we get best in slot gear, it's gonna be a little bit weird. But I do believe as long as you are not overflowing your haste by over, I say 0.6%. So if you have like 11% haste, 12%, 14%, I honestly don't think it matters all that much. Astral builds. There are a few builds that I'm testing out as of now. The two of the most builds, two of them I'm using the most is number one over here. I'm going for 3 into, I don't even know how to pronounce this, boots, or whatever, the thing in the top left corner. 3 points into that, and then once we get 48, I'm going to pump 1 extra point into Huben, which is going to put us just over 11, I think 101 perception. This is build number 1. Number 2 is this one. I haven't used this as much right now. Is the critical build, is the critical damage build. I haven't used this as much, but with this one, you're gonna take this 1 extra point into haste, another extra point into haste. Not sure how beneficial that will be, but haven't tested that out all that often. Last one is the classic Huben build. This is probably the build that I'm going to end up with this patch, which gives us just if I use my regular gear, give me a second. It's gonna push me at about, I think, just 104 perception, which is pretty good. Just over 11% haste, it's still good to me. And I think overall, like I said, if you're not overflooding your haste by over 0.6%, you want it to be like on the dot, and then you want your perception to be as close to 104 as possible. And those are pretty much the two rules that you do have to follow. This patch you can get 48. You can get 48. What's it called? 48 astrals. So what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna take off this haste point. I'm gonna put it along with the new point I'm gonna get it in. Get 1 extra point into critical damage. Now the reason why I don't get the critical hit is because like these 3 dots are complete garbage. You have a haste, you have HP, you have physical defense. I don't want to go for this. Um, these dots in the middle are really bad too. Some defense, some perception, some HP. But like the thing is, these 4 dots are really good. It gives you mastery, magic attack mastery, and critical hit as well. So like you're just gonna have to weigh it out, and then like depending on how many astrals you have, you're gonna check out your stats and see which stats work best for you. That's the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed. Um, Please tune into my stream because I do adjust astrals and gearing a lot in my streams. I usually stream on Thursdays. And if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments section below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Happy soloing. Peace out.